Hey, Neal, thanks so much for being here with us today. We're going to talk about culture and leadership and how all these things intertwine. So, I guess to get started, just tell me a little bit more about you. Tell me about your leadership philosophy.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit. I think that's always an interesting question to ask because I have a leadership philosophy, but I always think people that really know it are the people that work with me day in and day out. And so, a little nuance on that question is I'll share some of my leadership values. And my hope is that that's what people actually experience. So, one of my main leadership values is that people feel empowered to do the things they need to do with the authority that they need to do those things. I find that when you have a team that has responsibility and the ability to make those decisions that go with that responsibility, they're far more engaged and effective. And that's sort of my job as leaders to make sure those things are in sync. That's one. Another one is that people feel connected, that their strengths are being leveraged, that they feel like they play a role in the team. I had a staff press person last year say, "Hey, I'm not sure if I really know my role and what role I play on the team." I said, "Thanks so much for sharing that. That's really important because if that goes on for too long, it's easy to get disengaged. And if you don't see how you fit into the bigger picture." So I also feel like that's an important part of the leader is to constantly be tapping into where people are at and where they continue to not just use their strengths and gifts now, but how they want to develop those so that they see a runway that's far down the road. So those are just a couple, and happy to expound on anything further if you'd like.
No, that's awesome. So, I don't know how much you heard about like our create framework and how we use it to kind of inform how we help companies build better culture, but you touched on the beginning and the end of our framework, the C and the last E, which are connection and then elevation. So, it's cool how you kind of wrapped those up without maybe realizing it. But awesome.
I
So,
didn't realize it. That's great.
very cool. On LinkedIn, you're pretty active on there. You talk about leadership. You have these great posts that are really enlightening and help with employee engagement and the employee experience in general. But something that stands out to me is when you talk about how leading is generative and you use this phrase and you say these things and some people are like, "What does that mean? Can you expand on that?" Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I love answering that question. I'm always hesitant to go into it because I don't want to get too academic or nerdy about it, but it is a topic that I think makes a lot of sense to me and I think will benefits other people. So in a nutshell, generative leadership is leadership that multiplies healthy leaders. But what does that look like? I think we all aspire to that. Yeah, that sounds great. I want leaders that reproduce leaders. What does it look like? It's really four orientations or four ways of looking at leading in an organization or your team. It's relationships, an orientation to people, intentionality with those people. You know who they are, you know what matters to them. It's an orientation towards innovation. We are trying to grow something, we're trying to change some things for the better. There's an element of risk, a willingness to risk. Number three, it's an orientation towards personal growth and development, and that for your team. We're not here to just do a job and make a transaction. We're here to learn and grow as humans, as people. And I think the leader can model that and also inspire that in the people that they get to lead. And then finally, number four, an orientation to adaptability. And when you see uncertainty, what's your response? Are you excited by it? Are you willing to try new things? And you can see how that kind of connects with innovation. But those are sort of the four pillars of generative leadership: relationships, innovation, growth and development, and adaptability. And then, as a person who aspires to be a generative leader, which I aspire to that, I try to focus on those different elements in different parts of my week or when I start to feel challenged. Oh, this isn't actually an opportunity for some risk. Okay. How can we risk better as a team? How can we lean into the innovation opportunity? What the result is, eventually, hopefully, are leaders who are beginning to replicate that and develop the people downstream from them. I find it to be a really winsome sort of model of leadership that brings together servant leadership, transformational leadership, and these other values that I have as a person. So I love generative leadership. I think it's something I'm still learning about, but I try to implement every day in my work.
No, we have a lot of conversations about culture and leadership with people from a variety of industries, and I've never really heard people double down on the innovation aspect. I feel like when they talk about leadership, they're so focused on either the here and now, healing a past version of ourselves, or thinking about what we're going to look like in the future. But I don't usually hear them bring in the idea of like solving problems or doing things in a new way, or the way that innovation plays into leadership. So that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so all of this is great. Like, if you're helping a leader multiply other leaders, there's tons of leaders. Like, they have to be leading something. They can be leading their family, they can be leading at work. But at work specifically, how does that contribute to company culture? Because that's what we're all about.
Hmm. At the simplest level, if if you can lead in that way, in a generative way, that is going to increase retention. And so I have the privilege right now of working on a team that the typical time frame is 2 years that people are on a kind of average team. And right now, my team is more in the 4 to 5 year average. And what I'm noticing is our culture is growing and developing on our little department team. And it's beginning to have more influence in other departments and in other areas. And so I think the trickle effect is when you're leading out of a place that really supports people, develops people, grows people, and is innovative, people stick around because they feel invested in the mission and the vision. And that translates to how we interact with each other. It translates to that feeling, I want to come to work and I want to be a part of this. And so at just that base level, it's retention in my mind. What
Mhm.
do you do after that? I think the sky's the limit on what are the things you want your particular company or department to embody, whether it's playfulness or thoughtfulness. You can go places when you have people sticking around. But if you're always churning people in and out and you're always hiring and always onboarding, I personally, as a leader, find that the most difficult place to build culture because you're always sort of back to square one. So I know that's an idealistic version of it, but it's how I see it and why I think it's so important.
No, that's super important. When we introduce Nectar to a new company, we are literally talking about how we have seen this not only increase employee engagement, but also reduce turnover. And like you said, much easier to build
Yep.
upon a great culture and to make it great when people are actually staying around and you're not having new people cycling through all the time so that you have something to build off of. So I
Right.
guess when it
And
comes to
and at
leadership,
some
oh, sorry, go ahead. Go
I was just
ahead.
going to say, what's so interesting about that is, let's say a company is using Nectar and they're really benefiting from all of what it brings, and people are sticking around. You sort of reach this tipping point where there's more people that have been there than haven't been there. And as new people come in, it's almost like an orbit, right? There's this gravitational pull towards the center of the culture, and you spend less energy talking about it, training it, telling people
Mhm.
what it is, and more time is spent just people kind of are pulled into it. And that's what engagement and retention specifically, I think, brings an organization. It brings less, there's always effort, but less effort to people just absorb it. They're part of the culture and they get it earlier. So just a little
Yeah.
aside on that.
No, I love that. It's great. I guess it gets me thinking too about leaders and what, I guess, for you, what traits or what qualities or what skills really scream leadership.
Mm. Well, that we could spend hours talking about that. And I love hearing what people also, how other people respond to that.
Mhm.
For me, some of the most important traits in a leader starts with initiative, a willingness to take that first step. It's humility, a willingness to admit you don't know everything, but you're willing to learn and grow. It's a desire to have, Patrick Lencioni talks about this, your motive being to actually serve and not climb a ladder or have more power. But if you can serve, if you see leadership as an opportunity to serve, that motive will be evident to people if it's real or not. And to me, that's a person who can go a long way in an organization if that's truly their motive. Because honestly, it's hard to lead people. It's not, if you're in it for yourself, it's not really worth it. You're going to burn out. But if you're in it to serve and build something bigger than yourself, um, that's a that's a different motive, right? And so I'm trying, when I look for people to hire or promote, I'm looking for those things. And of course, there's lots of other skills, but those soft skills of what you just bring in your personhood, I think are some of the fundamentals. And again, we could talk for an hour about all the rest, but those are some of the top ones for me.
Awesome. How do you approach this? How do you approach developing leaders? What is it that you actually do in your role?
Yeah. Practically, it's a weekly one-on-one with every one of my direct reports. It's a weekly team meeting that is a combination of connection, business updates, things we need to all talk about, and intentional development, bringing in outside speakers, bringing in resources, offering a professional development plan through courses or curriculum or conferences, and then looking for places in the organization that I can essentially offer more responsibility, which depending on the person, they're like, well, I've got enough on my plate. But a person who really wants to grow, you just have to get on the same page about what that is and where that is. So me as a leader who might have some further insight on the horizon, oh, this is coming down the pipeline and it's this interesting nuanced thing, can I help that person get connected to that opportunity? Not just to take on more work, but to expand sort of their experience and realize that's professional development, that's growth. I remember being asked to serve on a committee that felt like, well, it's kind of overwhelming. And at the end of those 6 months, wow, actually, that leader was giving me a professional development opportunity. And looking back, I'm so thankful for it. I expanded my ability to serve. So those are the basic ways that I try to do it. It's very personal and connection oriented, but then using, sort of the benefits of your position in the organization to help others excel.
Very cool. What is the company or how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah. So I have, this is what's interesting. I don't know if you're even aware of this, Emily. My full-time job, I work in higher education. So I work with students as both in faculty, I teach and run the student development residence life program. And what I do more prominently on LinkedIn and my side business that I started a number of years ago is called Carta Leadership. And it's a boutique, small leadership development coaching consulting firm based out of Denver. We work with young leaders, emerging leaders, mostly in their 20s and 30s, who are looking for some of the things I've talked about, but they're just not finding it at work. I want to grow, I want to develop, I want to learn how to lead people, but it's not happening where I'm at. Our hope is to supplement that, to really walk alongside those leaders and to give them tools and resources and personal support in that journey of developing your leadership. So would love to serve anyone who feels like, yeah, I could really, the way that you're talking about leadership resonates with me. It's kind of a specific person who's looking for that. Carta Leadership is there to serve that person.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, things you miss, things you feel like you want to say?
I mean, I think that the most misunderstood thing about work and leadership is that it's just hard. And we talk about it like it's this amazing mountain to climb. I live in Colorado, so this conquer a 14er, like that's what people talk about. You climb a 14er. And the reality is 14ers, they kind of stink. They're kind of hard. It's not always fun. And yet it is a rewarding journey. It's just usually slower and harder than we think. And so for anyone who's feeling like, I don't know if this is for me, I think that that's a fair question and that it is difficult, but that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, or it doesn't mean you don't have the ability to continue to grow and develop. It just means life is hard, people are difficult, and that's how do we adapt to that and learn how to serve people well and grow our own self-awareness in that process. So it's hard, but it's worth it, and keep it up if you're feeling like you're in the slog.
Perfect.